Okay. Good afternoon. Today I shall start with the different kinds of natural disasters. So, as we discussed in the last class, that there are some natural disasters, some anthropogenic or man-made disasters, and some are environmental, which is a combination of probably a combination of both natural causes and man-made causes. Now, the reason of this distinction is some of them might happen because of some natural causes, or maybe any natural causes generating out of human action. Okay, I will give an example. Say the first one of under this geological disaster is an earthquake. So earthquake can happen because of many reasons. Most prominent one is the tectonic movement, but it can also happen because of say a nuclear underwater nuclear tests or something. Okay, the Parmanu test, which was done by APJ Abdul Kalam long back, it created a tremor along the ground, and somewhere, wherever there are weak subsoils and all, a mild earthquake might have occurred. So there, human intervention was there, but the disaster that has happened was similar to disaster that happens because of naturally occurring phenomena. Okay. So let's start with we will directly start with the different types of disasters. Uh, Most prominent one, I have not subcategorized all of them, but what I have done is I have prepared a hierarchy of natural disasters, irrespective of whether they are clustered under geological or meteorological or hydrological or medical. But I have clustered them on the basis of, or I have arranged them on the basis of whether they can be measured or not. Okay. Uh, so that if it is measurable, or if the impact of it is measurable, then there is a chance, there is a higher chance of preventing it. Okay. Or to manage it. So if you know that it has different degrees of effect, then it can be easily, not easily, definitely not easily, sorry, but it can be protected up to a certain extent. And then depending on that particular value of its intensity or magnitude, necessary actions can be assigned. Okay. So let's start with earthquake first, maybe. It is a kind of where, okay, all of you keep on listening and just keep a notebook open. Since I am recording it and it will be shared in the chat box, you can access it after today's all the classes are over. I also sometimes try to upload it in YouTube so that you don't have to waste too much of data behind right now. But keep on taking small notes, or else you can just open a blank PPT, open certain blank sheets, take a screenshot of the screen that you are having, and just keep on pasting them. Or somebody who is accessing through mobiles, you can just keep on parallelly taking screenshots of the screen, because the audio you would be hearing. Okay, so let's start with the earthquakes. The earthquakes are known as a quake or movement or a tremor, TREMOR, tremor. But it has a capacity to or capability to inflict considerable damages. That is what is an earthquake about. The problem is the earthquakes cannot be predicted. There can be a trend, but you cannot predict. Neither you can predict the scale, neither you can predict the source, neither you can predict the accuracy of the disaster or the scale of the disaster that it might create. So, like tectonic or earth is composed of different plates of different composition at different temperatures. So there can be common movement due to the rotation of earth. There can be common movement and some relative movement in between multiple plates, tectonic plates. Now relative movement means, suppose two plates are moving, but two of them are moving at the same speed and same acceleration, or say zero acceleration. So that means both of them are not at relative motion. one of them is not in a dynamic condition with respect to the other. So each of them are static with each other. No, there it will not create a problem. But it will create a problem if two of the tectonics are at relative motion. So the term relative motion is important. Now, the motions can be of different structure. One is stable, the other is moving, or both of them are moving. So let me show you the different type of tectonic movement maybe. Okay. Has the slide changed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the tectonic plate movements, these are very sketchy diagram. I'm sure the art place doesn't looks like these bricks, but they are basically broadly of three types. Okay. It can be combination of any of those, but if we discuss uniquely, then they are of three types. One is the converging. Two of them, two simultaneous or two side by side tectonic plates are moving towards each other, then it is converging. So what will happen is the point where they converge, it will rise higher up. So that can create an earthquake. Or the second type, which is a divergent. So the two tectonics, the two plates are moving away from each other. So there can be a subsidence or fall or trench created at the junction, which can also lead to all the superstructures getting inside the earth, as well as it is pushing on the different other direction also, where there might be some static plate, where it can again result a convergent. So on the either sides, not in the center, but towards the either side, it can again lead to multiple earthquakes. And the third one, which is conventionally the most common one till date, is the strike and slip fault. So once two are moving, but both of them are not moving at a positive or negative head-on collision direction. So the axis is not collinear. The axis of striking is not collinear. So if they are not collinear, then one will slip above the other or one will slip below the other. Okay, so one of the mass will go higher, the other will go down, and this is very common one. But all of these are particularly happening under the Earth's crust. That's for sure, not over the crust. So if there is a earthquake on the mountain, on top of a mountain, then we will not call it an earthquake. It will lead to something else like landslides or avalanches that we will talk later. But this happens below the Earth's crust. Okay, it might also happen under the sea also, because under the sea there is also a crust, a part of the Earth's crust. Okay. So let's try to find out certain terminologies which are relevant with earthquakes. Okay. So generally, the point where this tectonic movement happens is known as the focus of the earthquake. Okay. It is also known as a hypocenter, HYPO, hypocenter, CENTRE. Okay, so that is the source where this tectonic movement originates. So it might be under the earth at different depths. So depending on that, we have three different categories of this hypocenter. So if the hypocenter is within a depth of 0 kilometer to 60 kilometer from the top of the earth crust, 0 to 60 kilometer, we call it a shallow earthquake. So 0 to 60, okay. The other type is, so if it is 60 kilometer, the hypocenter is at a depth of 60 kilometer to 300 kilometer, 5 times more, 300 kilometers below the surface of the earth, we call it a medium depth quake or medium depth earthquake. And if the source is below 300 kilometers, you can understand going below 300 kilometers under the earth. So it is known as a deep earthquake or deep quake, Quake, quake. So quake is actually the hypocenter, the source. Okay. So if it is something is happening core, say 300 kilometers or 60 kilometers or say 200 kilometers below the ground, then it will keep on submerging outward because of the rotational movement. So if it rotates, then it will try to flicker outwards towards the crust. So the point exactly on the top of that focus on the crust is known as an epicenter. I guess all of you have heard of these terms, but just to recall all those, it is known as an epicenter. So epicenter is the point vertically on top of the crust, or the place where if you draw a tangent, it will be perpendicular to the line joining that tangential point with the focus or the epicenter. Okay. So there maximum outburst happens, maximum tremor is felt, and it depends on the speed with which it travels from the focus to the epicenter, as well as the strength of the resistance. So if they are of light structure, if the earth crust from the epicenter to the focus is lighter or softer, then it will travel fast. And if it is stronger, it might happen that the quake, the jolt, is absorbed within the crust. Okay, it will not even reach. There will be a slight movement on top of the epicenter. So what happens is, if you have a solid rock, there will be cracks developing. But if it is desert or if it is ocean, okay, lot of things goes underground because everything is loose and easily the vibration comes out. So it will continuously keep on coming out until it finds any solid states. That means the earth, the material of the earth crust. If it is gaseous, so once it comes outside, it dissipates easily. But what happens is the whole earth is filled of solid and liquid particles only. So some sort of tremor will be felt in the surrounding area also. Okay. Now, if your house is, or if your structure is exactly on top of the epicenter, the problem that happens is you will feel a jolt, and there will be a lot of say wave like shaking that will happen, which will be rising from below the foot towards the roof, and then it will crack apart. It is something like you hold a biscuit like this and crack it apart. Okay, or anything, any wafers and all, and you crack it apart. In that way it happens. And I'm sure earth crust is not like a chewing gum that it will stress, it will have a lot of tensile. No, nothing. It is a good compression agent, so it will crack under this tensile stress. But if you are away from the epicenter, so there is a chance that this frequency of earthquake dissipates slowly, it reduces its strength, it loses its strength, and it becomes weaker until it reaches the structure. So the distance from the epicenter to the structure is generally conventionally known as epicentral distance, EPICEN, epicentral, TRAL, distance. So they are generally concentric circles around the epicenter, but they are not exact circle, they are circular. And this pattern depends on the nature or the strength of the surface. So if it is a strong surface, it will move very slowly, but it will not move to a very further distance. But it is softer, it will move faster, the horizontal spread will be faster, and it will move easily. Okay. Is it clear till now about the action of
Yes,
earthquake?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now this tectonic plate movement can happen naturally because of Earth's rotation. Okay. Or say some asteroid strikes at a particular place, or it might happen because of some human action. For example, say blast in the mines, underground mine, there has been a blast. So it doesn't require a tectonic plate movement, but it generates a movement or a vibration which slowly will get transmitted away from the location where this has happened. It can happen because of nuclear explosion. It can happen because of volcanic activities also. So where say not even 300, maybe more kilometers from the core, the magma which is coming out, it comes out just like you shake a bottle of Coca-Cola and leave it open. So in that way, it keeps on coming out. So sometimes you will feel that if you are just poking on top of the bottle, and most of you have seen that what happens when you drop a Mentos in a Coca-Cola bottle, it keeps on bulging out, and sometimes it is so, like, depending on the diameter of the nozzle, it generates vibration also. It will push you, if you are trying to lean inside, it will push you away. So it is sometimes very strong. So coming, since we are discussing about the strength of it, so the reason of taking earthquake first is, as I said, earthquakes cannot be predicted until unless the source is a factor. The source is a situation which has arisen out of human activity. For example, say you are dismantling a huge structure. Maybe there is a oil rig from where you were taking up oil from under the ocean. So once it is done, you cannot leave it as it is. It has to be dismantled. So you might have to start some controlled explosion, and that might lead to some tectonic movements, relative tectonic movements. So you know what is going to happen. So what we do is, we have some barrier, artificial barrier created out of, see, damping, soft cushion, rubberized plastic dampeners in circular pattern around the rigs, and then we do the explosion. So that those dampers actually absorbs the vibration and protects it from transmitting it to the landmass. This happens. The same thing can also be done. Say, for example, say something like when you burn a cracker, why do you put your ears on your ear? Why do you put your hand on your eardrum? So to dampen the sound from reaching your delicate eardrum, to dampen the ear or the vibration to reach from your delicate eardrum. So here also same thing could have been done if you know the source, but most of the time the source of earthquake is cannot be predicted at all. Okay, it is very difficult because you don't know the depth, you don't know its intensity, and you don't know that how long will the intensity or the movement be happening. So we sometimes call that aftershock. Aftershock is something which is like, once the first earthquake happens, the high speed or the comparatively higher speed shaking reaches the epicenter fast, and then the rest of its vibration slowly transmitting it through the earth crust. After few times, maybe some days, maybe some hours, maybe months later, depending on how much time it takes to come from that tectonic movement, the joint or the focus, to the epicenter or to any point on the epicentral distance, how much time is required, you might keep on feeling aftershocks. So once we will study the preventive measures, we will see that once there is an earthquake, immediately rescue team doesn't get inside and starts rescuing until and unless they are absolutely safe or free from aftershocks. They just wait and try to find out at least one or two aftershocks and try to calculate a frequency, that how frequently these aftershocks are coming up, and then they find out that if it is dissipating and it is not of too much strength, immediately they will take necessary actions. Otherwise, bringing in say JCBs and all to pull up debris and rescue people might again create more danger to the people, those who are trapped. They might have been trapped under a table, they might have taken some preventive measures in the house, or you have built a house where the roof doesn't breaks, it comes down and the beams are in such a good condition that the roof and the beams are intact, everything, the wall has all broken out, and you are still intact under the debris. You are good to breathe, you can live for some hours without food and water, but you are alive. That's the main thing. Loss of life hasn't happened. So aftershocks are important because you might, if you know the rate of aftershocks, it might help in avoiding further destruction, enhance human destruction or loss of life. So since we are talking about the strength of this earthquake reaching the epicenter, we need to know that how these quakes can be measured. Okay, so any idea what is actually measured out of an earthquake? Can anyone say that we measure earthquakes, but what actually of earthquake do we measure? Yes, Rajdeep?
The vibrational intensity of the earthquake.
Uh, Yes, we do measure intensity nowadays. Okay, but initially it was not the intensity of the earthquake that we used to measure. Okay, initially we used to measure the vibration, the scale of vibration or the effect by studying the past history, that which kind of earthquake has created how much damage, okay, over the time in different countries altogether, without keeping into account the material on the superstructure, that how is the rock, how are the houses, whether there is a high density population or a low density population, or a tall rise structure or a low rise structure. Without keeping in mind all those things, we were just trying to measure that when there is a slip of tectonics, how much damage those causes. Okay, for example, say you are trying to calibrate a scale. So what you do is you have a water column and a water tap, a tube full of water and a empty water column on top, something like a long test tube, a burette or pipette, and then you keep a 5 kilo weight on that water tube, so the water level rises, and then you keep a 10 kilo on that, water level further rises, then you keep 20 kilo on that, water column will further rise, and they will not rise uniformly because water has its own weight. So what you do is you have the demarcation of 5, 10, 20, and in that way, and studying the differences, that 0 to 5 kitna hota hai, 5 to 10 kitna hota hai, 10 to 20 kitna hota hai, you try to divide it into, if not equal, then proportionate scales, and find out from your past experience, and you recalibrate the intensities. On that basis, what we could have we used to do is we used to divide the different places on the earth into different sensitive zones, like earthquake sensitive zones. So the sensitivity of an earthquake was initially measured, not the intensity, that how much of damage can be can happen on the earth crust if at all an earthquake comes up. So you have many of you have seen that there is a seismic map. Even if you do a Google search right now, you will see there are a lot of maps in India. Say seismic map of India. If you do a Google search, let me show, if I can show you one. Okay. Can all of you see my screen, which is a Google image search?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So you can see a lot of colors are given. Okay. This is not the exact one. Maybe this one is the exact one. Okay. So there are some light patches and there are some dark patches. So the depending on the past history. Now see the location of Bihar in this map. You see it over here. Okay. This happens country wise, but you know, the mountain or the shaking doesn't happens country wise. They don't see the administrative boundary when it gives the jolt or the quake. So what happens is, it is a part of the Himalayan foothills, including the Nepal and all, where one of the edge is in Uttarakhand, one of the edge is in Bihar, in India. Rest is in Nepal. Now, once it quakes, if you feel that the portion where it is not a red but orange, after say 1 year, multiple jolts are happening, multiple quakes are happening, and it is becoming beyond your prediction. So immediately what Indian government do is they keep on changing the color. Frequently they keep on changing the color over the year. So today something which is the highest zone, zone 5, may expand or may reduce. If for multiple years there has been no reporting of earthquake, that means the earth has settled quietly, then they remove the darker tone and make it a one tone lighter, and then keep on observing. And how does it helps is, it helps in designing the guidelines in the National Building Code, right? So I am sure by now, in this particular week, you are all aware of what a building code is, what a bylaws is, and all these different kinds of things.
Yes, sir.
You have been taught in your design class. So framing of this national building code or modification of that or updating of that could have been done by studying the nature of the earthquake. So if it keeps on changing, the frequency, the damage, the vulnerability, it keeps on becoming higher tone. And if there is no history of earthquake for a long time, we change it to lower tones. That was the general conventional practice. Okay. Where was I? Estimate. Okay. But you can understand that this kind of study of past cannot help in predicting the future. Okay. Or it was in no way helping the government in determining the microzonation. That means within the same place, within the same tectonic plate, there might be high density population, there might be low density population in terms of human being, in terms of structures which are vulnerable to earthquake and all. So slowly, since early 1902, 1905 and all, lot of researches were happening in predicting the intensity of the movement from its of this seismic scale. So we were trying to fix that scale to the intensity of the earthquake. So the first one was the Mercalli scale, MERCALLI. I'm sure all of you can see a table on top. Table 3.1. So the first column shows a Mercalli scale. Mercalli is intensity scale. So it is actually a seismic scale that gives earthquake intensity in a level of 1 to 12, based on essentially on the effects of the earthquake. Still we are on the effect, but we are trying to superimpose a scale on the effect so that we can divide it into multiple categories. So categorization of the effect actually is what we were doing. Okay. So on the left hand side of the column, I guess all of you can see that we have this Mercalli intensity scale written in Roman 1 to Roman 12. Roman 1 is almost an intensity which you cannot feel. Okay. And Roman 12 is which cause total destruction of the area. So again, there is a calibration. So one is a movement has been found. So these movements were initially found by keeping certain creatures, certain reptiles, certain animals in cages and trying to study. We used to try to study the movement or the agitation in the animals. Still today we feel that lizards and ants, they are good indicators of earthquake. Their movement, their agitation is fast felt. We realize from them and then we expect an earthquake. It might hear trivial, funny, but that's the reality. It is not a blind faith, but they feel the ultrasonic shocks beforehand, which passes easily without disturbing the earthquake. The sonic one, and if it is lower than that, which tremors the earth, comes later. So the earthquake that we generally feel is actually one of the measured or one of the felt aftershock only of the original earthquake. Okay, is it clear? So how do we ascertain this Mercalli intensity scale?
From its effect.
Okay, so I can add something to that. Now this scale of 1 to 12 is not depending on only the intensity. It also depends on the epicenter, where maximum tremor is felt. That can be 12, and the further you move, where no movement has been felt, that can be 1. So we arrange into concentric circles or concentric circular shapes on the ground, starting from 12 as the epicenter and 1 as the epicenter, farthest epicentral distance. That was the Mercalli scale. But it used to give an idea of the intensity of the earthquake. Then there were some other scales, which is the magnitude scale. Okay, it is not mentioned in here, but it is a magnitude scale. So since intensity scale is based on the effect of an earthquake, magnitude scales are based on the energy released during an earthquake. So we know a lot of tools to measure the energy, the joule that is getting generated out of any action. So if you can measure that energy that is getting generated, again we can give it some magnitude. Okay, the energy, because 1 to 12 of Mercalli scale are not all uniform. So the increase, the feeling of tremor from 1 to 2 is not equal to the feeling of the tremor if it is varies from 6 to 7. Definitely it is not same as 11 to 12. So the difference of feeling in between two successive Mercalli's intensity scale were not all same. That was one of the drawback of this intensity scale. But in magnitude scale, we try to measure the intensity. Now we are trying to be more realistic. So the intensity is actually the correlation. So we are trying to plot the correlation between the intensity and the magnitude, or the difference in between the intensity and the magnitude between two jolts, and trying to again calibrate that. So this was known as, this was first found by Charles Richter, which we in today's day we still use, commonly known as a Richter's magnitude scale. This is not an intensity scale. This is a magnitude scale. Okay, Richter, Richter's magnitude scale. Here we are quantifying what? The energy that is being released. So now you can know that energy has extremely high limits, right? Energy, I'm sure all of you know that if you are boiling water, it is slowly gaining energy, and that also if you are calibrating it, we need the temperature scale. Not only temperature scale, we need something else to calculate the energy, because when water is at 0°C and when steam is at 0°C, both of them are at the same temperature, but one of it has attained something else, hence it is vapor. What is that? Do you know? This is just a question out of the context. Water at 100°C and steam at 100°C, both of them are at 100°C, but they are of two different form. So what is the difference in between those two other than the form?
So molecule spacing.
Energy.
What was it called in your class 9 physics?
Latent heat.
Exactly. Latent heat of evaporation.
Yes.
Okay. So that is never measured by a thermometer, but you have other devices to measure that. Similarly, we have something to convert 0°C water into 0°C ice also. So it is a specific, it is a difference between the specific heat which gives rise to temperature, as well as the latent heat which doesn't give rise to temperature. So similarly here also we have something. What Richter did was assign a single number to an earthquake to quantify the energy released during the earthquake. So we have a lot of histories of earthquakes are all recorded. Now we are trying to ascertain or assign a single number to quantify the energy that was released during that earthquake. And you know that if you are having linear scale, who knows that where it is going to end? But you have to quantify it within a certain limit. So what Charles Richter did was he created a logarithmic scale. So the central column that you see in your screen, the Richter magnitude, is actually a linear numerical conversion of a logarithmic scale. So it still maintains that from say 1.0 to 2.0, the change in the energy, whatever the change in the energy is happening in this particular range, and the change in the energy from the second row, which is 2.0 to 3.0, is of log. That means exponential it is increasing. Okay. A good example of this logarithmic scale is, see if you remember the change of the total COVID patients back in March, it was increasing in say few tens. So every day there was increase in 10, 20 and all. So you are getting good curves or good lines, points. But in today's day, it is increasing in number of 50,000 or 60,000. So what happens is, with respect to 50,000 per day, the increase of 10 to 11 patients which happened in March were negligible. In the same graph, you cannot even observe. So what we do in today's days, we fit a logarithmic curve. We take the log normal of that mathematically. I'm not asking you to calculate those, but it gives a realistic and comparable scale. So we understand that the more it increases in the x-axis, the log of the value of y-axis is actually increasing. So the absolute unit in log is comparable now. Have you got it? This I will explain with another example from this chart itself. From say the intensity in Mercalli scales Roman 5 is equivalent to Richter's magnitude of energy or the released as 4 to 5. So if the energy released is from 4 to 5, anything in between that, the amount of energy released. So the difference of energy released at 4 scale and 5 scale, the difference of that energy is not equal to the difference of energy that is released in between 6.0 and 7.0, the eighth row. But the log of the energy that is released in between 6.0 to 7.0 is comparable with the difference of energy in between any previous scales. So now you can compare the difference. That means the damage that happens when the energy changes from 2 Richter scale to 3 Richter scale, and the damage that happens when the energy changes from 7 Richter scale to 8 Richter scale is many folds higher, many folds higher. It is almost this x, that means the change in the energy, which is a superscript or to the power of E. So now we have a better scale, and in the right hand side we have given examples that a comparison between the two different scales of Mercalli's and Richter's, and the significant observation of changes. That means the first one is felt by very few people, but it is not noticeable. So somebody who was working in the mine maybe at that point of time felt some tremor, but on the crust nothing was noticeable, no changes or no physical damages has happened. The second one is felt by few people, especially people on the upper floors, because if you know sonic vibrations, and it is in an arc-like shape. So at the center of the arc, all of you can see me at the bottom of your screen. Can you see me, my video in the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this V that I have pointed, at the center you have a arc which is a smaller radius, and a high upper range you have a bigger radius. So the energy at this point and energy at the upper point, the total energy is same. So if the total energy is same, that means intensity is slowly dissipating, but the energy has remained the same, because definitely energy is not same, but in a log scale the energy is almost same. So the damage that is happening here, the gap that is creating at the edge, at the center, and the damage that is happening at the top or the upper level is bigger. So it is better to be at a lower floor during an earthquake rather than an upper floor. Okay. So these just have these presentations will be recorded in this recording. Just have a look later. There are multiple examples of earthquake that has happened over years. We have huge histories over hundreds of years. Maybe we can recalibrate back after seeing these effects observed on the earth crust and find out that what kind of earthquake might have happened in the Jurassic or Triassic eras. That is also possible by backtracking. Okay. So during an earthquake, certain survival tips. Okay. These are general because we have to do the proper architectural management and mitigation later. But once you are in an earthquake, just quickly note few points what to do in case of an earthquake. These are small tips. If you are inside a building, drop down and take cover under a strong desk or table, holding the legs of the table. So you can quickly draw a rough sketch of this particular thing. So if you are inside a building, get under a strong desk or a table and keep holding the legs of the table. Should be good enough. And you can do it until you have a clear access to move outside the building. Next is, once the tremor starts, ensure that you are away from heavy furniture like bookcases or crockery cases. Okay. So avoid being close to heavy furnitures like bookcases or crockery cases, because it might immobilize you if they fall on you. Okay. Next is, stay away from windows to allow the emergency people enter inside and rescue after you're done. Okay. Move away from windows. Fire alarms and auto sprinkler may go off in high-rise building. Next is, while inside a building, falling debris is the most dangerous thing. So protect your head by keeping a pillow or some protective things on top of your head. So now, your question should be, why are you reading all these things? These things are read because when you design a room in different zones, we should also choose which kind of furnitures to be kept inside the room. Not only that, we should also choose what should be the dimensions and locations of openings, doors and windows in the room. At what point the ceiling fan should be. As we discussed, the ceiling fan should be on top of the bed, and once there is an earthquake, the first people to die will be the people below the fan. So exactly where should be the location of the ceiling fan? Those are to be judged. You have to be very judgmental in deciding the final design solution. Okay. Now, if you are driving a car and you are feeling the tremor, drive to a clear place and stay there until the shaking stops, because cars are never permanently fastened with the earth. So it will slowly dissipate the shakes, dissipate the tremors. Okay. So these are basic tips that you can do during an earthquake. These are definitely not the architectural tips. Okay. So let's go to the next kind of natural disaster. Let me have some water. Okay, sorry. Next one is a volcanic eruption. I've taken volcanic eruption as the next topic because it is similar to earthquake, but it leads to something else. It arises because of presence of lavas and tectonic movement under the earth crust, but the effect is different. So you cannot be happy just by measuring the intensity or the energy of the volcanic eruption. You also have to take some other necessary actions. Now here, not only architects, but urban planners also come into the situation. So volcanic eruptions takes place by the forceful ejection of lava and other form of debris through a vent on the surface of earth. So either it can be lava, which is in a molten or liquid state, or debris, that means something which has already solidified over years, and a strong gust happens, because once a liquid gets converted into gas, it increases in its volume. So the intensity at which it thrusts out from weaker surfaces on the earth, for example, the volcanic fissures or the cracks on the earth crust, from where ejection of magma might happen. So those are generally known as volcanoes or volcanic eruptions. Now, volcano not always necessarily causes natural disasters or cause problem of mankind, but if there is too much of debris and lavas coming out from there, then what volcanologist means expert people studying the nature, cause and effect of volcanoes. So they say that this eruption might stay for long time because you don't know that the path is strong enough to keep, for example, say I am having a bottle of Coca-Cola, I am shaking it, and I am putting a cork on top of it, just thrusting a cork on top of it. Okay, I have this one. I put a cork on top of it, or I put a cap on top of it. So if there is a cork and I shake it vigorously and there is too much soda in that, which will give rise to carbon dioxide, it might happen that because of this weak plugging, it will come out. But if it is a cap, which for volcanic eruption human being cannot do, but has to have faith on nature that someday the rock solidifies just like the cap instead of this cork, and then the volcano doesn't comes up with eruptions. Now this volcanic eruptions, what problem it causes is it exterminates vegetations, animals and habitats. Okay, it so it can happen under the sea, it can happen on the ground, on hillocks and all, because if it is a hill, there are chances that there will be weak fissures or cracks developing on the surface. Because of this, particularly you have heard of this block mountain and fold mountains. In block mountain it generally doesn't happen, but it happens in fold mountains, because fold mountain is also an occurring which happens because of tectonic movement under the water. So slowly the Himalaya, which is a fold mountain, which is still in tectonics, is moving. So that might give rise to volcanic eruptions. So how do we measure this volcanic eruption? Have you anyone seen this chart before anywhere? I don't think so. This is not a very common chart because we are not aware of these volcanic eruptions. But suppose one day you get a good PWD job in Andaman and Nicobar. So you have to do with this particular study. So how do we categorize or indexify or evaluate the magnitude of volcanic eruption? Volcanic eruption index, or commonly known as VE index, is something which is scaled in 9 different scales from 0 to 8. On the left hand side you can see. Now second column is plume height, that means the lava or the fume that is coming out, how high it is. And secondly is the eruptive volume. So how much of volume of area is coming out, how volume of magma is there is a chance of it to come out and spread over that much area. So if 1 cubic say 1000 cubic meter of lava comes out, it will spread over an area whose total volume, the area over which if you measure the damaged area with the height, the total volume will remain the same. So what we have is, first one is less than 100 meters of plume height. 100 meter is not very high, it is almost like a helicopter flying above head. So 100 meter is high, but continuously the eruption is happening. Okay. The second index says it is 100 to 1000 meter, almost 1 kilometer, and see the eruptive volume, it is increasing by many folds, 10 to the power 3 times, because it is in meter cube, but the frequency comes in months. So this, the first and the second intensity comes in months. The third comes and the fourth comes in 1 or 2 years or few years. So if this frequency of volcanic eruption is regular, that means there are certain volcanic eruptions which not necessarily gives rise to lava or magma, but say a small island known as Iceland in the northern UK, where we have something known as geysers, which is a natural volcano which, because of the cold climate, only give rise to fumes which is happening because of melting of ice. Ice immediately melts because of high temperature, and rather than forming flame, it gives rise to water vapor. So those are known as geysers, but it happens throughout the year. There are a lot of points where visitors are taken, just like viewing the Niagara Falls and all, where people go and observe those natural geysers, and they are continuous in nature and they are not very high. So if it is going high by 100 meter only, it will spread over a particular distance only, that is also measurable. So you have to observe it from a point beyond that. There's a criteria. So there are some other things. Now if the plume height is very high, that means it was dormant for so long, and the frequency is, see, you can see the frequency is say 10 years or above. It can be 1000 years, it can be 10,000 years. So That means after every 10,000 years in a cycle of magma, it will come out. Now, good thing about volcanic eruption is you cannot prevent the volcanic eruption. So better if you can judge the locations of the frequency of this volcanic eruption, then you know that which is the zone beyond this particular eruptive volume, depending on the plume height, that how far should be the habitation from the weak fissures on the earth, on the what do you call, on the crust of earth. So if there is less habitat, less will be the damage. So as a precautionary measure, people should not stay near a volcano, and at the first sign of eruption should evacuate the place immediately. I don't want to recall the history what happened in Pompeii or Herculaneum long back, because of some other resources of say golds and all which were available. You know, if you have volcanic eruption under the ground where there is streamline or streams of water, then slowly chemical reactions keeps on happening, and then they give rise to gold. So because of this abundance of gold, lot of rich people started developing in Pompeii, and all of us know what volcano did to them. They could not even evacuate on time. The next one, very common one, the next type of natural disaster, a very common one, is a cyclone. Okay, so I guess all 8 of you have faced cyclone. All 8 of you who are there in the class. Is there anyone who has never felt a cyclone? You can click on raise your hand. So if all of you have failed, one of you please voluntarily come up and say, what do you mean by cyclone? I'm sure it is not the only thing that people call it a cyclone, so I will call it a cyclone. You are an architect, and by now you should have something additional understanding beyond common man. So what is that? What is a cyclone? Anyone?
Sir, when there is, as you know, due to depression,
Yes.
the air movement from periphery, it starts to move to the epicenter from where the depression begins.
Okay.
And along with it, if it carries a either cloud or vapors, then it forms a cyclone.
Okay. Can you see a white screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
so this kind of movement happens when there is a equator in the or some other axis. So wind in the hot area and wind in the cold area are moving into opposite direction, and this kind of short wave keeps on arising, and at the core you have this kind of direction. So cyclone is actually an area where you have wind moving in 2 different directions. So what Viveka says is perfect, correct. But he has gone too much into depth into the effect of a cyclone. He is talking about the clouds, the circular motion. But what cyclone is cyclone is an area. Okay. Cyclone is an area of closed circular motion of any fluid. For example, say if I say that what you have a glass of water, you have a bucket of water, and you have a bathtub of water. 3 different situations are arising. One is you have a glass of water, you have a bucket of water, and you have a bathtub of water. And you have 3 other tools. One is a small stick or a spoon. You have a mug or a cooking spoon maybe, or a serving spoon, and you have a what can I say? You have a like those flaps or fins which the divers used while diving down. So what you do is you create a movement in a circular clockwise or anti-clockwise motion in all three of them using those three tools. So whatever is happening, if in the glass of water, the glass water keeps on moving in a circular pattern from top to bottom or bottom to top, as well as so there will be a circular motion. But if you cut it through any point, say at any point within that particular moving water within a container, there is at least movement of the fluid particles in two different direction, two maybe opposite but not collinear. So anything that arises out of that is a cyclone. So it is very generic. Whatever you were explaining was a cyclonic storm. So a storm generating out of cyclonic motion. So in this away from these equatorial areas where you have this tropical areas, particularly Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and lot of other geological features that you are definitely all aware of, say heat wave and cold wave moving simultaneously, one from the land towards the sea, other above from the sea towards the land, or the reverse direction at night. That can also give rise to a cyclone, but there the cyclone, the axis of the cyclone is horizontal. It moves horizontally. So land breeze comes in, sea breeze goes out from the sea. So it is the movement is perpendicular to the surface of the land. But if the movement happens horizontally, that means wind is going in this way and the other wind is going in this way. So what happens is a swirl keeps on happening. It is something like you are trying to mix something, maybe this dalgona coffee or dalgona coffee, whatever you call it. So those movements within any fluid, but it is generating out of low and high atmospheric pressure. That is the cause of cyclone. There has to be a difference in atmospheric pressure that will give rise to cyclone. Okay. Now the intensity as well as the formation of the cyclone is debatable. It happens in different countries, particularly now. Vivek talked about formation of like cyclonic or circular movement in the clouds. Now, once this happens in the clouds, if it is a funnel-like shape, then the same cyclone conventionally on Earth we call it a typhoon. Okay, typhoons are common in the Pacific Ocean. So the western coast of USA, Alaska, where we have San Francisco's and all, California particularly, western coast of Mexico, Chile, Peru and all, as well as the eastern coast of Japan, eastern coast of Russia in the Tropic of Cancer, or the eastern coast of these Indonesian islands, or which is the Tropic of Capricorn. There, whatever cyclonic phenomena happens, which gives rise to the clouds, because on the ocean you have a lot of water vapor creating cloud, and those clouds keep on swirling also. Those are locally known as typhoons. The same if it happens in the Atlantic Ocean, for example, say this New York or Florida on the eastern coast of USA, if you can imagine the geographic atlas, or say in the west coast of Africa or the west coast of Europe, say on the Portugal coast, on the Moroccan coast and all, those are known as hurricane, but all of them are basically cyclone, storms arising out of cyclonic movement. So change of atmospheric pressure is happening, that is giving rise to an area where there is a circular motion of fluid. So still now we haven't been able to judge its devastating effect, but you can understand that we can only judge it is to be devastating only if it causes problem to loss of life or properties. So to understand that, we again are trying to scale it up or quantify them. So Shafir and Simpson hurricane wind scale, it got its name hurricane wind scale because this cyclonic storm was like these people, they calibrated the storms that were happening in the Atlantic coast. Atlantic coast is the coast where or the Atlantic Ocean is through which Titanic actually moved from the European coast to the North American coast. So there is a subtropical region as well as the tropical region. So if is like we call it a suitable condition or a favorable condition for the cyclone, which is not favorable for human being. So if there are two opposite directional movement of air happening, in the center of it, some jolt starts happening, giving rise to the cyclonic movement. Cyclonic circulation generally spreads over hundreds of kilometers over the sea. On the sea, since we have this constant, like there is no barrier to stop this wind on the sea, it moves very fast. So the point at which cyclone hits the land and start losing its strength, the point, when it reaches the shore actually, what is it called? We have faced 3 cyclones in the last 2 years. What is it called? We used to say at 4 p.m. on this particular day something will happen. That means the cyclone will come from the sea and
Landfall.
reach the land. Yes, please again.
Landfall.
Landfall. Okay.
Landfall.
A common mistake that people does is instead of writing landfall, they write landfill, particularly architects. So please be aware, it is landfall. Okay. So after the landfall, it starts dissipating because it doesn't get a smoother surface. It is something like you are skating on a smooth flake of ice and you are skating on a rough stone rocky surface. Something like that. So slowly what happens is the storm starts losing its strength, and then it over a few kilometer distance, depending on the original speed at which it originated and how much time it requires to lead to almost a depression, a pleasant wind, that much it can go inside landmass. Now, the previous two were not predictable. The earthquake was not predictable, neither was the volcanic eruption. But since cyclone generates in sea and we have equipments to measure the wind pattern, flow of wind and the temperature, we have multiple equipments. So cyclones can be predicted, and that's good for human being. The second reason for its utility is, good thing about the cyclone is they generally originates in ocean, and human being seldom lives in ocean. They lives on land. So you can have that time to mitigate the effect of the cyclone, or to prepare yourself, or preparedness, or you can develop your resilience against the cyclone. And believe me, cyclones happens irrespective of whether they are hurricanes or tornadoes. They mostly happen in the coasts. Cyclones mostly happens in the coasts. It can also happen, say, if you have heard of these hurricanes happening in the Florida areas, where beyond this city there are flat vast country lands where there is almost no resistance. So you have heard that tornadoes keeps on taking away. Lot of movies has been shown, right? Lot of movies has shown tornado taking away things from the landmass, from farmlands. People are moving across a road, a highway, where there is vast horizontal flat lands in the surrounding, where you can actually see the tornado happening. Okay. So we have this wind scale. Let's focus on kilometer per hour. So if the movement of the kilometer of this hurricane wind scale or the American standard is less than 62 kilometer per hour, like 62 came from nowhere. 62 is something like when you convert it into knots, nautical miles actually, which were determined by the sailors. So that was less than 35. Or say around 34, because at 35 knot, these dimensions are coming from the speed gear of the ship. When you drive, when there is to be this captains of ship, they have this speed dial. So they had certain markings, regular markings. So increase the speed from 35 to say double, say nearly 65 or 70. So from 65 again to say 95, in that way they had certain categories of increasing of speed, not all uniform. So they have taken those only, that at what point which kind of ship will get turned by a cyclonic speed. So that gave rise to this classification. Okay, because initial days when this was initially discovered in nautical miles, hundreds and hundreds of years back, still there used to be cyclone, there used to be fishermen's boats. Who first faced the cyclone? People on the ocean, they faced the cyclone first. So this origin of the scale happened from users of vessels, maybe ships and boats in the sea. So tropical depression, say I don't know where all you are living right now, but right now in Rourkela we are facing a tropical depression. That means there is a cyclone, but it is not strong enough to be called a storm because its speed is less and it will bring in say a cloud. Maybe maximum it will bring in some cloud and it can give some high humidity as well as some rain. So if it gets higher than 62 kilometer per hour, but up to 120 or 118 kilometer per hour, it is stormy. So you will not feel the air, but it will be windy or stormy. And particularly in tropical countries, every day, because of this land breeze, sea breeze action or say albedos and all, we have this tropical storm. Now we call it a storm because say in the if you are in the eastern coast sea, if you are at Paradip, if you are at Puri, if you are at Chilka, if you are at Vizag, every day in the morning after your breakfast, if you go in the sea, you will feel some strong gushes of wind. Same in the evening. It is very pleasant sometimes, but those are the tropical storms. That means depression is slowly getting converted into a storm at that point of time, where there is a speedy exchange of air with two different temperature. Okay. And accordingly, if it keeps on going higher, we have category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from say 119 kilometer per hour to something higher than 252 kilometer per hour. So 252 kilometer per hour is something like you are standing beside a F1 track and a car, some Michael Schumacher has zoomed past you. So that is 252 kilometer per hour. So the gust of wind that you feel is good enough to throw you. You have seen accidents happening on racing tracks. So that force with which a person is thrown away from the vehicle, that can be resulted out of this particular wind scale. But when these things were happening, these were calibrated on the sea. So we have a new scale for India, because India is a tropical country. We have a lot of tropical and subtropical coasts. So this North America, when they used to use this SSH wind scale or Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, India, because they already had this meteorological department long back, IMD always stands for the Indian Meteorological Department, has a similar scale of cyclones particularly meant for Indian Ocean. Now Indian Ocean is not the ocean where it touches the tip of Tamil Nadu or Kerala in Kanyakumari and all, but it is surrounded by many other parts. The Andaman Sea is a part of the Indian Ocean itself. Bay of Bengal is also a part of the Indian Ocean, but ocean is of different scale altogether. And this Indian Ocean also has this Thailand, this Indonesian islands of Bali, Sumatra, and other countries. So for this particular thing, and in the north, see, because of this unidirectional rotation of the Earth, in the northern side of the equator, from the north of equator to the Tropic of Cancer, the movement of wind or the heating of wind happens from the east to the west. East is in the sea, west is on the coast. So you will see that there is a similar pattern on the atlas of the eastern coast of India, including Bangladesh, and the eastern coast of America. If you see the atlas, the eastern coast, the shapes are similar, and that has been deformed by the cyclonic storms only. So this IMD scale says that if we have category 1, 2, 3, 4, people will not understand. And then what kind of management measures need to be given to category 1, 2, 3, 4? There might be a lot of overlap. So let's them individually with different terminologies. In Indian Ocean, up to 51 kilometer per hour, we call it a depression. Okay, because the housing typologies, the housing patterns in the coast of India and the coast of America are different. So say 62 kilometer of tropical depression in USA and 62 kilometer, the same wind speed in India, some of the houses might break in Indian subcontinent, but not in America. So they have done a different calibration. So less than 51 kilometer is just a depression. Particularly right now, the weather in most of the coastal districts of India, we have depression. Next one is a deep depression where we have not only humidity but also gust of wind as well as rainfall. And the higher we go, we have cyclonic storm, we have severe cyclonic storm, we have very severe cyclonic storm, and the super cyclonic storm. So once we will be designating all these categories, like these are also similar to the Australian coast and the New Zealand coast. So the Oceanian subcontinent also has similar scale where they have taken, they are particularly, the name is only different. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology or Australian BOM, BOM that they call, Australian BOM. They are also cyclonic, they are the Tropic of Capricorn that they face. So they are the direction of cyclone is just the reverse. But they are also, they have this kind of scales, these 5 scale or 6 scales. The magnitudes are almost the same depending on the damage that it can create. Okay, so just according to this kind of different scales of storm, since cyclonic storm is preventable, we need to take necessary action before the storm strikes, during the storm, as well as recovery after the storm. Okay, so let's take one of the example of cyclone, say the tornado, and then find out what tornado does. Okay, before, just don't look at the screen yet. Tornadoes can cause damage to trees and buildings as well as the coastal land surface. Tornadoes has different name in different country. The term tornado is used in the North American country though, but it has different name in different countries. Say in Japan it is known as Fujita, 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 and they have a Fujita scale for that. There are some other countries where they use the Beaufort scale, Beaufort scale. They are overall the same thing. It is all classifying the speed of wind with the degree of damage that it causes. Okay. So if you can classify those, necessarily actions can be taken. How many people need to be involved in which kind of disaster management arising out of the cyclone? So those gives rise to tornadoes. Tornadoes are actually, if you see the previous slide, these categories, say category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the SSH wind scale are known as tornadoes. Okay, but the tornado has their own scale. Okay, if I can show you one of the example of tornado in undivided India, I'll take you over there. I will share the desktop. Okay. I hope you can see the coast of Bangladesh and the coast of West Bengal of India in the center of the map. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Can everyone see? Somebody might have a slow internet, it might take some time. So I have highlighted Bangladesh because all the Sundarbans and all that you can see, the estuary where the rivers meet it, there are a lot of creeks which has happened. This has happened, which is not only the effect of this rivers coming up, but it has happened because of the cyclones that had hit over the time. And here, this beige yellow color where you have the term Chittagong written on the right hand side, there are a lot of islands you can see. They have happened naturally out of the cyclone. So severe cyclone has hit the land and certain places have gone under the water. Only the super superficial structures which are still on the ground, they are now islands. So you can see there are hundreds and thousands of islands in the Sundarban coast, which has happened because of this cyclone. They used to initially be called tornadoes. Cyclone was coined later. So if a cyclone happens in the coast, as you can see in this particular picture, what should be done? Okay. I've taken it from a book itself. The preventive actions that the individuals must take to protect themselves from cyclones. Fishermen should return to the shore immediately as the sea can be very rough due to the cyclone. All vessels, that means ships in the sea, must also return to a safe shore. So you will see what happens is, if you know the direction of the cyclone and how it is going to change with the prevailing wind over the next few days from its origin to its landfall, you can determine that, okay, the ships or the fishermen were particularly from Visakhapatnam, but on that of that particular place, instead of Visakhapatnam, if they get halted in Chennai or Chembur, the cyclone is not going to get hit. So necessary actions are taken to shift all those fishermen and the fishing vessels to a different sea coast. In that way, we are actually reducing the chances of damage that can be caused by the same cyclone. Next is, people should move away from low-lying area and from near the shores. So Amartya is absent today, but what he told me, I think he has problem with his network. Okay, he was telling that not only Amartya but even Shami was telling that they are in their places in Kerala, because of landslides and floods, they are facing problem. Many of the low-lying area are already submerged, but they are on a safer ground. So they are not exactly on a low-lying area. That means they are in a relative island condition. Cyclones create enormous waves in the sea and inundate the coastal area. So cyclone is a cause of enormous waves in the sea. When it leads to the landfall, it can generate waves. So there is a different term for this, which we'll read next, if time permits today. Poor people living in coastal area have poorly constructed homes which are not strong enough to withstand cyclonic winds and gets easily washed away. So we have studied that while studying different terminologies, that poverty is one of the essential cause of getting affected by hazards. So vulnerability index is determined by incorporating poverty also. Hence, you can also find out that there is lot of scope for you to design for certain communities in disaster prone area, if you can target the zones and the poverty level or the economic conditions. Next is, people should not be on the street, they should stay indoor, as wind speeds can be very high and flying objects can injure them. Okay. Can somebody recall, there is a recent advertisement of a deodorant where we see a cyclone affecting a person whose everything goes away other than this deodorant. Maybe a funny example, but
Yes, sir.
Fog.
Yes, sir.
so fog, or I don't know it exactly. It may not be fog. Fog has a different tagline.
Different.
It can be Park Avenue also or something else. But okay, don't go with that. But try to stay indoor. Okay. So you have seen lot of people during this funny and all, those who are taking pictures from within their house, they had the time to share the picture because they took it from inside the house. But people, those who were outside the house taking video, this news media persons and all, either they were live streaming or else their video could not be recovered because they have suffered damage because they were out on street. So please don't play smart in case of a cyclone. That's the conventional suggestion. Next is, people without sturdy home should move to cyclone shelter, which is a absolutely classic examples that certain permanent shelters in disaster prone villages are the schools, the health centers, the Gram Panchayat office. They are permanent structures or sturdy structures which can be converted into a cyclone shelter. I have heard of places that in a village where they are mostly farmers and they have burned off this paddy and all, and they are in a cyclone prone zone. If there is any one or two neighbors who has made pakka houses over the time, they don't do too much of partition in their house and they have huge hall like of rooms. They don't design their houses in a delicate way in which we design with the furnitures. That is because they know once there is a disaster, not only cyclone, maybe any other, those houses will become the cyclone center for their neighbors. Okay. Okay. So that's all about prevention from cyclone, preventive measures against cyclone. The last maybe for today is, we will take it from here only. The second point in the screen, people should move away from low lying area, and cyclone create enormous wave in the sea and inundates the coastal area. So do you know what it is called when this cyclone gives rise to a wave? Something called in Japan, a Japanese term. When the cyclone,
Tsunami.
yes, tsunami. Tsunami is a Japanese term. It means harbor waves. Waves arising out of harbor in Japanese is called tsunami. Okay. So there has to be enormous volume of water arising out of a cyclonic effect. Okay, let's get rid of those. So tsunami waves are not the same as normal sea waves are, because we all love to enjoy sea waves when we are where? When we are in the coastal good sea beaches, but none of us like it to be a tsunamic. That means a cyclonic wind where you are at a tendency of getting plucked from a lower level to a higher level, as well as wave coming in and flushing you out. So effect of two are never wanted, but the cause of tsunamis are generally submarine earthquake. Submarine, that means below the marine level if there is an earthquake, or volcanic eruption, or underwater blasts, or nuclear explosion under the sea. Nuclear explosion has to happen in a contained area. If you don't have areas like Pokhran, what we do? We go deep under the sea and then conduct the experiments. So this might give rise to waves which, coupled by a cyclone, can be devastating on the coast. So tsunami generally happens, or almost every time it happens, on the coastal area. The damage that a tsunami incurs depends on not only the height of the water or height of the water splash, but also the period, that how long it is happening. Both of them attributes equally to the effect of this tsunami. Like it can be as like, you know, that unlike volcanic eruption, the plume of volcanic eruption can be as high as possible. But good thing about tsunami is, if the height of the water is too high, then by its own weight, it will try to come down faster. Okay. So tsunami waves or the height of tsunami waves are not very high. But in the ocean, when we enjoy these gentle waves while having a bath in the sea, say in the Bay of Bengal, if not in the Arabian Ocean, a 1 meter wave sometimes gives you a good jolt. If it is a 1 feet, fine, you are enjoying it. It is drenching your feet and all. If it is a 1 meter height, it gives you a good amount of jerk and a jolt. Sometimes you are lost. You don't find the direction when having this bath. Just imagine if it is 10 meter. That means 3-story high a wave, how small you are in front of it. No chance, if you are not done with good anchorage, no chance of surviving. It will take you away. And you know, once ocean waves comes to the land, it also retreats back to the ocean. Okay. So that's a tsunami. When was the last affected tsunami that you can recall? The devastating tsunami in the Indian Ocean.
2000.
In India in 2004, right?
Oh, in the Indian Ocean. It happened all together in the Indian Ocean. So countries like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, the Myanmar, the Maldives, all these countries were affected. Uh, you can't
I
recall.
remember
Okay.
once in Japan in 2010. After that, in Indian Ocean, I guess 2011.
2011 was a tsunami. No, it by that time it got a name. It got a different name. 2004 was the first time when we started recalling it tsunami. Okay. Uh, India was not the country which had maximum death toll, but it generated in the Indonesian Oceans, the Philippines island. So in Indonesia, if I can recall, the death was approximately 1.3 lakh people died. 1.3 lakh people, you can understand in today's day how many people have lost their life in past 4 5 months in coronavirus. And in one day of tsunami, 1,30,000 people lost their life in Indonesia itself. And it displaced another 5 lakh people. So almost whole of Indonesia, having this 6 to 7 lakh of people, were all washed away. But in India, since it took some time to travel, the tsunami, because it is cyclonic wind coupled with wave and all, so there was an evacuation. So approximately 6.5 lakh people, if I recall exactly, were displaced, and loss of life was only 12,000. A high number, because in certain coasts where things were not like most like after 2000. Why I recall 2004? Because after 1999, I don't know whether you were born or not, but after 1999 super cyclone, this communication system was involved. They were like they were developed further, but they were developed only for cyclonic storm. The meteor, that means only wind. They were not ready for the wave, the water current that can also generate. Okay. In today's day, we have something known as the tsunami buoy, BUOY. So in the sea, we have a lot of floating equipments with the meteorological station in that. So once they detect a wave of a particular height, it immediately generates an impulse which is trapped. We are advanced now, we have this. So that started from 2004 onwards in India. Okay. There is a good movie known as Battleship, where this effect of tsunami buoy was introduced by these Japanese. Okay, because they are a pilot who were most affected by the tsunami, as well as like you can imagine that 1 crore of people displaced by a tsunami is almost like Japan blown away. Everything is underwater. So they have some other strategies of fighting the floods out of tsunami. They have underground chambers where they can store the water. So coming back again, in 2004, the tsunami happened in the Indian Ocean. It was a submarine cause of tectonic movement in the Sumatra Andaman area. Multiple countries were impacted. The damage has happened many-fold higher than one could have expected, because tsunami is not a very common phenomena. Like cyclones in different scales are a common phenomena, but tsunamis are not. Okay. Tsunami creates wave of such height and water enters the land with such a force that everything is destroyed, coming in the way of the wave. And on its return, it takes away anything which are loosely fastened, which doesn't have a good anchorage. Everything is taken away. That means it can cause problem to life, livelihood, animals, as well as properties. It unroots trees down depending on its strength. So the second disaster that happened was the 2011 tsunami of Japan. Because 2011, we are talking about uprooting human being, properties, cattle and all. In 2011, what happened was, in 2004, there was the tsunami which affected Indian coast. In 2011, Japan was worst hit. That led to a lot of nuclear leaks. If you remember the name of the city of Fukushima, where there were nuclear explosions that resulted out of just tsunami. Okay. Sea waves were somewhere 6 meter and as high as 15 meter. 15 meter is unimaginable. 5 to 6 story height. Japan, though it's a tall rise structure, but in the coast you cannot afford too much tall rise structure. Whole of multiple airports were under the ocean. So the preventive action for tsunami is just to avoid it. Tsunamis are essentially due to submarine causes only. So keep your livestock ready to be taken away in case there is, like we have Richter scale to measure the earthquake under the soil, as well as we have cyclone measuring equipments and all, meteorological stations and all, which definitely you have learned in your climate responsive architecture, all the equipments and all. So with this, we can actually save life by evacuating the area beforehand. So we have to take the action before the disaster. Okay. So these are some of the, what can I say, some of the geological and meteorological natural disasters that we have been discussing. I will take a break, may not be break. I will take a stop today. Tomorrow I will not take a class. Okay. If time permits, I will compensate it sometimes else, but no issue with that. We can always have, if you are having 3 classes a week, it is good enough. Okay. We have assigned 4 classes, but I'm sure I will complete the syllabus by end of October. You can be sure of that. So after that, the whole of November can be all tutorials. Okay. So have you all noted something, that what are the disasters that we have noted today and what are the key features and all? So if you have noted, then what I will do is I will stop the recording so that it can be shared later. You can get an access to that, or if there is any important clarification from my side, I can do that and then stop the recording. One of you is unmuted. Do you have a question? I can't hear you. Rajdeep.
No, sir.
Okay. So the subject is, I guess it is pretty trivial. It is easier. You don't have too much of technical things. Only thing is that don't misuse terminologies. Again, I am saying, don't misuse the terminologies. You need to understand the essence to be clear about what you are going to say. You suddenly go and say that there is a strong wind and lot of dusts are coming, and you immediately call it a blizzard. That should not happen. It will be blizzardous. It will be a disaster if you use the wrong terminologies. That means the wrong terminologies will give rise to different mitigation strategies, which might be redundant in case of the problem that you are facing. Okay, so let me stop the recording for today.